The holidays are doubly important this year, so make your celebrations doubly special. At Kroger, we've got a huge selection of high-quality meats on top of fresh, natural produce, like fresh, never-frozen prime-grade beef and our Simple Truth Organic Brussels sprouts, or delicious king crab legs with our private selection gourmet potatoes. Whew, had to say that doubly fast. Kroger, fresh for everyone.
Get more ways to save at the Buy 5 or More Save $1 each sale. Just buy 5 or more participating items and save $1 each with card. Kroger, fresh for everyone.
For the ones going above and beyond. For the ones reaching out, helping out, and lending a hand. For the ones people count on. You can count on Grainger. Grainger offers supplies and solutions for every industry. Backed by 24/7 customer support and specialists to help with hard-to-find products. Because you've got everyone's back. We've got yours. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Welcome to the AEW Match Guide podcast, where we deep dive into the best matches in AEW history. Brought to you by the Social Suplex Podcast Network and your host, Sam Brown. Yes, hello and welcome to the AEW Match Guide podcast. I'm your host, Sam Brown. Thank you for joining me. Every week, alongside a special guest, I take an in-depth look at one of the best matches in AEW history, taken from the definitive AEW Match Guide, as ranked by over 30 wrestling commentators from around the internet wrestling community. If you enjoy the show today, you can subscribe and rate it on your podcast app of choice. My guest for today is a podcaster and writer for WrestlingHeadlines.com, the guy I'd probably call my partner in crime, Matt Maher, aka The Implication. And we're looking at PAC vs. Orange Cassidy from Revolution 2020. How are you going today, Imp?
I'm doing good, especially now that I'm an implicant from Blade Runner. That's taking me to a new level.
Actually, I've never asked you, where did the implications come from?
Oh, it's sunny in Philly.
There we go. Yep.
I was really struggling for a name when I was signing up to the Lords of Pain forums to do the writing stuff. I'm really struggling, and I just watched that Sunny in Philly episode where they're talking about, well, what's on the boat? They're definitely going to do something with me. Well, why? Why would they? Because of the implications. What do you mean the implications? The implications.
that is a deep cut. Hours and hours of podcasts I've done with you. I've never thought to ask that. And the first time I get you on my podcast, it's the first question I ask. Look, as I said, we're doing PAC vs. Orange Cassidy from Revolution 2020 today. We're looking into that. Before we do get into the match, though, Imp, I need to ask, so you can tell the good people, what is your history with AEW?
So I drifted away from WWE in about 2014. It was a year I personally wasn't in the best space, and WWE itself was doing that weird kind of pushes for wrestlers which clearly weren't ready. And you could feel it across the product. Something was just off. And that's when I kind of just drifted. Danny Bryan had gotten injured. He'd gone, CM Punk had gone. 2014 was quite a turmoil year for the fandoms. And I drifted over to New Japan Pro Wrestling. I thought I'd give the G1 Climax a go. I'd heard about it and I decided to actually give it a try. And I instantly just fell for it. And New Japan has been my number one since, pretty much. They kind of saved my fandom, and I've kept up with them ever since. I'm currently writing a G1 Climax review in a year that's not been their hottest year, and those other people have fallen off. So I'm still like a fully New Japan guy. But off of that sprang AEW, just to fast forward a little bit, because I can spend ages going year by year. So it all sprang off into AEW, and I've been watching since episode 1, watching it grow, watching it improve, watching them kind of the mistakes they've been making earlier on. And I would still include, like, you can still see like production mistakes within 2020, but they've been learning from that the entire time. I've watching them grow as a promotion from the days of early Dark Order and whatever Brandy's little stable was going to be called.
The Nightmare Collective.
Oh, that was it. Just like but learning over time and kind of earning that trust over this course of 2 years to this point where we are now, where it seems every single week is the best episode of Dynamite. And even in their kind of like lower shows, still build characters and have so many different news stories coming off of it every single week. It's been an absolute joy to watch AEW. But yeah, it springs from New Japan, and I've just followed it since then.
Yeah, that's a pretty common through line for so far the guys I've had on the podcast, discovering guys like Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks through New Japan, Ring of Honor, and then following them through to AEW. We're actually looking at a match that's pretty early on in the history of AEW at Revolution 2020. That's about 6 months into AEW at this point. And there were certainly some flaws early on you saw, but personally, I found the build up to this match very, very exciting. And the build up to this card, this pay-per-view, is really like the company hitting on all cylinders for the first time. And of course, we'll probably speak about it in the wrap up at the end as well. But after this, of course, we went into the global pandemic, and I think AEW handled that very well. But I still remember the build to Revolution extremely fondly. And I don't know if I can compare right now to it. It'll probably take, a year to know if right now compares to that point, because I'm probably looking at it through rose-colored glasses. But things were hitting on all cylinders, and PAC versus Orange Cassidy was very much a part of that. So to get into the actual match itself, just to introduce it, PAC versus Orange Cassidy was rated 3.75 stars by Big Papa Dave from the Wrestling Observer. Grapple currently rated 3.85 as of day of recording. Cage match, it's rated 7.79, and this match came in 14th on the definitive match guide that we did earlier this year on WrestlingHeadlines.com. Why did you pick this particular match? I've got to ask. It's not the first one that most people go to when they look at this list of matches that we have to choose from.
Because there's so many top tier matches from AEW. And I was thinking, there's going to be other people to talk about other matches, which there may be, like, that's their style, that's their fandom a little bit more, which makes them, I guess, technically a little bit more kind of qualified to talk about that. Me personally, I'm a massive advocate for comedy wrestling. Comedy wrestling is incredibly difficult to pull off, and there's only like a select few that can truly do it well. And Orange Cassidy is one of them. And I kind of like, again, because my kind of life outside of the wrestling stuff is like stand-up comedy, that kind of world. So I'm all about comedy. I like this. I like variety in the card as well. I don't quite, like in a G1 climax, I don't quite understand why every single match has to be super serious. Like, it's fine to have a break. So that's my kind of thing.
I with comedy wrestling, I'd say the bar is really high for it as well. Like, if it's good, I agree. Really fantastic can be great, but not good comedy wrestling is really bad. Like an okay match, you still enjoy it a little bit, but an just okay comedy match is like, it becomes a chore. It can be awkward to sit through. I was at my local indie here in Newcastle, Hunter Valley Wrestling, a few years ago. They had a guy called Bubbles who shot people with a bubble gun, which it's a great premise the first time you see it, but it just never evolved beyond anything. And it was, it was completely one-dimensional, and everyone got over it very quickly. And, people booed it a little bit at first, but then it just became like, oh, they're doing this thing again, are they? Righto. And it's just, it's awkward. No one's reacting. It's annoying. Like, the performers find it awkward. So the bar is really high for comedy wrestling. I'm glad we're doing this match, because I think it's something that, is worth examining in depth. And as you said, Orange Cassidy and PAC put on a real clinic here in the way they sort of do things. In the build to this match, it's an interesting contrast of two characters, because in the build, you've got PAC, who's this guy that's placed right at the top of the company. In his first match, he beats Kenny Omega, and he goes on to have a program with Kenny Omega, a program with Hangman Adam Page. He has a match with Jon Moxley. He beats Darby Allin even. This is a guy who is positioned right at the pinnacle of this company. And the match before this one is a match against Kenny Omega, the 30-minute Iron Man match that I talked about with Rich 2 weeks ago. This is a guy who is an absolutely featured performer in the company. And Orange Cassidy is in a much different position on the card up until this point. He initially debuts in the Casino Battle Royale on the pre-show for Double or Nothing. He's sort of an added extra in with the Best Friends early on, and does have a few interactions with PAC, but is certainly not positioned highly on the card. He's more of like an auxiliary performer up to this point. Did you have any history with Orange Cassidy? Did you know much about him before you saw him in AEW?
Yes, I'd seen I guess the odd Twitter gif of him in different promotions, but GCW was where I'd seen him initially, and I can't. But he had he was one of those people who put on a personal show for GCW over WrestleMania weekend, and I'd seen him partake in other ones, but when I saw his card, it's got his name on it. I can't remember what it was called, but it was Orange Cassidy's something. And it was his show.
Honestly, it was Orange Cassidy. It probably would have been called Orange Cassidy something or other.
Yeah. And they were it was wacky kind of ideas for matches, like Trent versus Chucky in a 30-second match or something. It's just ridiculous stuff.
I want to track this thing down now.
So it wasn't the best GCW show of the week, but it stank of Orange Cassidy. So it was it was a unique experience.
Yeah, I think before the Casino Battle Royale, I'd definitely seen him. I think I'd seen like a gif of him doing the kicks, maybe. And between the Casino Battle Royale and the next time I saw him, I remember seeing this really funny clip. I can't remember who posted it, but credits who did, of a match between him and a guy I think called Gentleman Jarvis, where Gentleman Jarvis puts him to sleep. Somehow he falls asleep in the middle of a match, and Gentleman Jarvis is trying to pin him without waking him up and trying to get the crowd to not make any noise so they won't wake him up. It's really fantastically done and hilarious as well, because of course there's the one moment where they think they've woken him up and he just rolls over and it's like, oh, okay, we're out of it. And then, of course, wakes up at the end and they have this great finishing sequence, but very creative, very interesting. Given that we're talking about this guy and he's doing these very quirky, strange things, how did you think he would fit into AEW when you first saw him show up and become a part of the company?
Well, because AEW kind of implement that indie style, that a lot of just straight up PWG being put on television, and they've kind of got that style.
Yeah,
I personally thought
angles and finishes at different points.
Yeah, but it's just the fact that I thought because he's gotten over on the indies, I thought he would be fine. But that's my own kind of thinking. My worry was, well, the wider audience. You saw it when he's made his debut, and the amount of people that were just like, what is this? Is this guy a joke?
Yeah.
You saw those initial reactions, and I was like, trust me, the thing that really got him over immediately was the crowds. Yep. I feel like the crowds really 100%. Helped. Those people who were in the know, who knew who he was, and like me, was popping along with the stuff.
Yep.
All of his little initial moves, it was cool to see on the big television in front of the crowds. But the crowds really helped get him over because immediately everybody knew they're all in on it. That's the thing that really helps. And what comes across in this match as well, by the time he's having this match, everybody in that crowd knows how to react to Orange Cassidy.
Yeah.
Even though I can't remember if he had a match at this point, but they knew how to all react to what he was doing, with the chance of he's going to try, which I forgot. I forgot about that little bit.
Yeah, I honestly you could see he was over and see that the crowd was loving him. But I just did not know how they could fit this character into the framework of AEW because, there was that line about them being a sports-based company, which people took wildly out of context. And what I think it's come to mean is that this is a company that takes the results of the matches seriously. And there's lots of other things that could have meant, and it possibly did. They probably did think it was different things at the time. But the way that I've took that is that, this is a company that does take the actual action in the ring seriously and the results of what happens in the ring, whether it be win, loss, draw, that has a real implication on what's going on, like a win or a loss or a draw in a sporting contest has an effect that lasts on the team, an ongoing effect, and it's something that's recorded and something that's remembered and something that's harkened back to. And I just didn't know how you put a guy in who just his whole stick is that he doesn't really care that much. He sort of doesn't care. And we're going to get into the character of the match because I think his character really reveals itself in this match for what I think was the first time that he's got, this more three-dimensional formed character rather than this gimmick, which is fun and very interesting, when the whole crowd's reacting to it, something that people can get into and something that people can get a laugh out of. But I think in this match, you could see how the whole package comes together for the first time. Now, I don't want to go too into PAC because I did cover that in depth 2 weeks ago with Rich. So it is well trodden ground, and he is more of the straight man for this match. But did you have anything to add about PAC at this point in his career, where he was, what you thought of him in AEW at this point?
Well, because at this point, I don't think Triangular de la Muerte were properly a thing yet.
No, that happened a couple of weeks later after this. I think in the week after, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, so they were together, but they weren't like together. It wasn't that solidified yet. It's more like a loose kind of relationship where this helping each other out a little bit. But at this point for me, PAC, he just before joining AEW, he'd come off of like a mighty title reign over in Japan, and was this like dominant champion, which was a whole thing with the AEW World Title Tournament. Was that over in Japan they didn't want their dominant champion losing in a semi-final match or final for a different title. So that's why PAC was, if I'm right, he was pulled from the match against Hangman, and we got like a battle royal instead. So PAC had come off that really dominant thing, got into AEW, and was a top guy, which you've probably all covered in the Iron Man show. But he had just been dancing with top guys in the promotion. So when he goes against Orange Cassidy here, this is Orange Cassidy versus a top guy. Which is kind of something as well. And yes, it's in that pre-main event slot, and it is. I think that's the other thing, because it's in the pre-main event slot on the card. We were at the time with that, because I brought this up on my AEW review recently, that in AEW, do they really have the deathmatch slot? Is that actually a thing? And this was like the first time I saw it in AEW, where I wasn't entirely sure that's going to be a thing in AEW, like the pre-main event match got the crowd going crazy. It's and it happened on AEW this week as well. But this was like the first time I properly felt, and that's not the answer to your question about PAC. That's what I'm talking about. Matches and all, but yeah.
Yeah, well, I think Dynamite and pay-per-views have got different rhythms. The pre-main event match of Full Gear 2019 was Cody versus Chris Jericho for the AEW Championship. So that's no piss break before you get to the main event. With this match, getting into the build of it, these two first sort of hinted at the fact that they had fantastic chemistry with their characters in late 2019 when PAC and TH2 went up against Best Friends at Orange Cassidy, and PAC and Orange Cassidy had their first little interaction, and it was fantastic because you've got this guy who's just this no-nonsense badass, gritty, dark. Well, it's his nickname. He's a bastard. He's serious, and he's not afraid to, take heads on his way to the top against this guy who's, kicking his shins and acting like this is all a joke. And the look on PAC's face is like, this isn't a joke to me. Why is it a joke to you? And I believe the first time that OC went to do the little leg kicks, he got pump kicked in the face by PAC, who did not take lightly to it. And then this was set up straight after the Iron Man match that PAC had with Kenny Omega on the Wednesday night before Revolution, where OC interrupted the post-match interview, strolled out during it, and then as PAC was pissed off for losing the match against Kenny Omega, he took that out on Orange Cassidy. Later that night, it was revealed that they would be having a match, and of course, Chuck dropped that classic line saying, "PAC, you think he's a joke? Well, joke's on you, because this time he's going to try." And the crowd loved that. It immediately got a "he's going to try" chant, and that comes back up in the actual match itself. As you said before, you've got a background in sort of comedy. You've done interviews with comedians. I know you and your brother's got a fairly decent sized comedy YouTube channel. Why does this match and the contrast of characters make such great sense comedically?
Well, you've hit on it earlier in this, where it was like the straight man in PAC and then the pure silly guy. It's the classic comedy pairing. You got the straight man and the silly man, the idiot and the smart one. And they play off that 280. And the thing with the Orange Cassidy match, which is, again, if I'm bringing up the just the G1 type of thing, there's something that happens in the G1 is everybody wrestles to the other guy's style. So each match is like a style of the two people. So when you get to the Yano match, everybody wrestles the Yano comedy style. Everybody tries to out Yano in those matches. And that's what happened here with PAC and Orange Cassidy. PAC tried to wrestle Orange Cassidy's style of wrestling. That's what happened here. And the fact that both performers are all in, because it doesn't work if it's just Cassidy, which in WWE, they'll either go full, we've got this hilarious idea, guys, and you're going to do this wacky thing.
And everyone's having a food fight. Yeah,
something like that. Or you've got the comedy guy being the comedy guy, and then the other one will just beat them up really quickly after they do like a 30-second bit or something like that. Whilst here, the reason that it works is if you have that same example of big guy, comedy guy, for the first half or first little bit or sequences, if the serious guy jokingly partakes in the comedy, that really does help get the comedy guy over. And PAC did an absolutely amazing job of this match with Orange Cassidy. And for me, that's like an absolutely massive part of it. It's the straight man kind of taking the piss, but he is partaking, is willing to partake in the comedy. Because if he doesn't do that, then Orange Cassidy he's up against a brick wall of nothing. So he can't really get his stuff in. Yeah.
Well, I think on that note, we best actually get into the actual match and get into the action. Immediately, they do set up that dichotomy of the straight guy, this serious badass ass kicker, and you know, this lackadaisical guy who's not going to try and you know, isn't necessarily taking this so seriously, where PAC storms down to the ring, intensity written on his face, you know, grumpy, angry, pissed off. OC sort of wanders to the ring, and then he rolls like you know, like maybe a 5-year-old would roll down a hill. He rolls into the ring, and of course has the match, has the glasses and the classic denim jacket. And JR gives a great line. JR is a fantastic straight man for this as well. I think. Yeah. Sometimes he can be a bit grumpy, and he doesn't necessarily do his, like, he doesn't always do, you know, compliment AEW all that well, but in this match he does. Great line. I've never seen him have a singles match. I don't know if he ever has. And the crowd's before they've even touched, the crowd's chanting he's going to try. Initially, Cassidy refuses to remove his glasses. He goes for the pockets, and PAC intercepts, because that's the absolute worst thing that could happen, is letting OC put his hands in his pockets. I don't know what he's got in there, but it powers him up or something. But OC counters the pockets part by tying him up, taking him down, and immediately PAC is shook and the crowd is on their feet. And that opens up the door to the Orange Cassidy character, which we're going to see develop here, where you've got this guy who on the surface appears to not care, and probably doesn't care as much as, you know, some wrestlers do, but he is still a wrestler and still wants to win. And he uses this facade to lull the defenses of the other wrestler and until they make a mistake. And then he uses his skills, which are finely honed, to take advantage of that. He kicks up after tying PAC down, puts his hands in his pockets, and, you know, looks triumphantly. And then PAC gets up, pissed off, clotheslines him, you know, and then OC goes to clothesline him, and OC just nonchalantly dodges it. So immediately, like, you've got someone who he's previously never really been shown to be like that big of a deal, but is immediately elevated to the level of being able to keep up with a guy who a couple of days earlier was on the same level as Kenny Omega. Pretty incredible. I'm not going to go into all of the, you know, the spots that we go through in the match. At this point, the crowd is chanting "Fight Forever," by the way.
Yes.
But what are some of the spots that you remember from this match, particularly, you know, in the first half, 3/4 of the match?
I'm trying to remember my favourite spot of the match. I can't remember where in the match it is. I guess it's two bits. Number one is when PAC starts to take in the kind of kicking the shins lightly as the crowd go, oh, which again is another example of everyone in the crowd is in on the joke. They're all in on it, reacting as if they're generally exchanging full-on super kicks that are almost decapitating them. But the PAC joining in that is well, again, and of course eventually PAC just forearms him in the face, which I really like. But my favourite spot, which is exactly what Sam was talking about earlier, in PAC luring them into a sense of kind of he's not even trying type of thing, and then just explodes, was when he was rolling from side to side of the ring to avoid PAC doing the the red arrow or black arrow in AEW. Yeah, and it's just about the time where he rolls over and PAC's got he knows he's going to do it now, so he just walks to the side he's going to roll to. Then Orange Cassidy sees him, just laughs and smiles and rolls back into the middle.
Yep. PAC, into the hard cam. Yep.
But immediately after, PAC is kind of like kind of angry around ringside walking, and Orange Cassidy jumps to his feet, bounces off the ropes, and suicide dives right into PAC in the barricade. Which is exactly what you were talking about. It's implemented so damn well.
Because to get to that point, right, like Orange Cassidy, he isn't necessarily on PAC's level, and PAC does take over, and some huge offense by PAC. He looks like an absolute beast. Orange Cassidy sells so well. Where we talk about this guy as a comedy wrestler, but this is traditional pro wrestling stuff. He's a face, he's selling, he's showing that he's in pain. There's giant Liger bomb but can't get the 3 count. This guy's got grit, he's got fire to come out, but he's just got a bit of a different style. After an avalanche brainbuster, PAC even pulls him up. After the 2 count happens, then PAC pulls up the shoulder because he wants to punish him some more because he doesn't like being embarrassed the way he does. And then when then they go to the rolling bit, and you know what the crowd's chanting? This is wrestling.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. When Orange Cassidy is rolling from one side of the ring to the other, and PAC is storming around the ring to try and get to him so he can hit the black arrow and try and win this match, crowd is chanting, "This is wrestling." You've kind of touched on it before, but do you think this could have worked without the AEW crowd?
I mean, if it's an indie crowd, yeah, because they'd also be in on it. Yep. In a WWE crowd, with their almost set studio press the button chants that happen in WWE, as in what the crowd is going to chant most of the time before they even do it. I don't know if any of those would fit into this style of thing. It's all in the presentation, I guess, as well. And the way that they've structured this match builds to that point. Because before then, you've had Orange Cassidy, I think it was before, where PAC has launched him into the ring post and he's been down for quite a while. And this is his fight back, or Orange Cassidy's equivalent, whatever, which leads to him exploding into an actual fight back.
Yeah.
But I don't know if it would have worked in WWE specifically. Everywhere else, probably yes, because the crowd needs to be in on it. And indie crowds be in on it. A New Japan crowd, they would probably get into it as well. The big example is Yano. They get into Yano, they'll get into Cassidy.
Shop on eBay this holiday season to get more for your dough on stand mixers, or get more for your buck on this season's hottest tech and gaming gear. And on eBay, you can even get more bling for less cha-ching on jewelry. You can get more because you save more on premium brands with eBay's exclusive deals. Get more when you get it on eBay.
Some coffee's fast, but not fresh. Some coffee's fresh, but only after a long wait. Speedway coffee is made fresh at the push of a button, hot or iced, so you can have fresh coffee your way, right away. Find a store near you at speedway.com/locations.
It'll be all right. Yeah. But the crowd does sell it. If the crowd isn't doing those reactions, then this match doesn't quite explode in the same manner as it does in the second half.
Yeah, I think even with the New Japan clap crowds, I think that they very clearly show how you need to have a full range of emotions be able to be on display for the comedy to work, because I love some Yano. I love me some Yano. I'm not a hater on Yano. But personally, I don't feel like he works anywhere near as well in the pandemic era. I don't think comedy matches should be long is another thing that we'll get to with one of the, when this match wraps up. It's not a long match. I don't think, 20-minute plus comedy matches is really something you just can't keep the gag going that long, I don't think. I mean, unless you're the Stadium Stampede, right? But that's a whole different kettle of fish.
I mean, I wrote that in my G1 Climax Weekly review, where I was talking about, because I put in my top 5 matches. I put Kota Ibushi versus Yano from Korakuen Hall. I put it in because it was 5 minutes, and the entire premise was Toru Yano put a hood on Kota Ibushi, and Kota Ibushi's entire G1 is teetering off the edge of a cliff while he's walking around blinded in a hood around ringside. And Yano wraps him up in a burrito off the ringside apron. It's just...
Yeah.
And his G1's literally is on the edge of a cliff right now.
Yeah.
But it's 5 minutes. That's the big important thing. Compared to, I think we're hinting at the match versus Chase Owens, which was like 25 minutes. No, absolutely not. I do not want that. And this match also falls into a nice little, like 10, 15 minutes?
Yeah. I think it's just under 15 minutes is what it comes in at. So I think the perfect sort of time for this, the sweet spot is, you probably got to go over 5 minutes, but you don't want to be going more than 15 minutes in a comedy match unless, it's something completely exceptional. And I haven't, apart from Stadium Stampede, which is a cinematic match, so I don't think it counts. Really, it's a completely different beast. I haven't seen it work. I think thinking about the crowds, like the importance of the crowd in a comedy match, I think is just like so heightened. I think of that Gentleman Jarvis and Orange Cassidy match that I spoke about before. If the crowd's not bought in on the idea of like him falling asleep in a match and not wanting to be woken up so that he can get the roll up and the ref having to count quietly, if the crowd's not bought in on that, it's, it doesn't work. Or another example, which is probably one of the more incredible and unique matches I've ever seen, the Invisible Man versus the Invisible Stan from Joey Janela's Spring Break.
Yes.
I mean, it relies on one of the most incredible ref performances ever by Bryce Remsburg.
Oh, yes.
If you've never seen this match,
what do I
Google
call
it. It is
so good.
Like, no hyperbole. I think it is probably the greatest refereeing performance I've ever seen because he directs the action so well between two performers that aren't there. But also the crowd has to be in on it, right? Because the crowd is following and reacting like they're there, and that has to be part of it. Like, this is a real case where the match lives or dies on the reaction that the crowd has, and if the crowd doesn't get in on that, it just doesn't work at all. And in this match, the crowd playing along the way they do just elevates it so much. Rather than if it was even just like a half-hearted reaction, it wouldn't be, where they do chant along a little bit. But the fact they're so in on it, chanting "He will try," chanting "This is wrestling," like it just creates an atmosphere where this comedy can work, and where the character of Orange Cassidy can emerge. And also when the big fire-up spots come, like the one you mentioned, where Cassidy, having tricked and lulled PAC into lowering his defenses and sort of playing along, he's clapping on the outside and like he's pissed off, but he's clapping to sort of just like whatever. And then the minute like PAC takes his eye off the ball, springs up, flies across the ring at him, absolutely launches himself full body at PAC, and the crowd is on their feet. They completely buy into it. The True then like trade proper strikes in the middle. Orange Cassidy does put his hand in his pockets, hits the orange punch. He gets the Slumdog Millionaire, and the crowd just absolutely lose it. Like they're going off, at the same, maybe not the same level they did for the tag match earlier in the night, but it's comparable in that like you can feel the energy in the atmosphere. And then of course to end the match, Best Friends interfere. The Lucha Brothers run in to distract Bryce Remsburg. And that gives PAC the chance to take down OC. And when Orange Cassidy is distracted by everything that's going on and lock in the Brutalizer, get the win. PAC just cuts him off at the perfect moment each time in this match, I think. He's clearly the better wrestler, but OC just shows that he can hang at that highest level as well in this match. As I said, this match doesn't even go 15 minutes. Yet in our definitive match countdown, it beat out some absolutely giant matches like what we're doing next week, Jon Moxley versus Brody Lee. It beat out all the Cody and Darby Allin matches. This is some high-profile series of matches, these guys, that have happened in this organization. And yet this little 15-minute thing beat them out. Why do you think this match is so beloved in the canon of AEW?
I think part of it is when it's the first time in AEW that Orange Cassidy ever tried. It's the first time, really. Like, most of the fans didn't know his moveset. They didn't know they knew what to chant to, they knew that. But the bigger audience, they're not like me. They hadn't watched Orange Cassidy in GCW. They didn't know what wrestling things he could actually do. And you saw different, I guess, article writers across the wrestling spectrum, just like, if this is him, I don't care. But those in the know, those who've seen Orange Cassidy, it's like, they trust us. This guy can explode into some amazing wrestling. And that's exactly what we got here. It was the first time on AEW he'd ever actually shown his moveset. And the crowd reacting to that in, oh, holy crap, he can actually wrestle when he tries. So that is I feel like that really elevated this match. The fact that they hadn't had him try before this night. So when he actually does, and he's got this whole arsenal of moves, he can actually wrestle. Just like Yano. He's got a whole list of amazing moveset. He just doesn't use it. He just doesn't need it.
He pulls it out when he needs it. Yeah.
And this was the first time in AEW they ever did that. And the crowd reaction to it is amazing. It's fantastic. PAC kind of drawing it out of him over the course of the match really does give to that too. You don't see it until there's that explosion. And there were little things, like he'd do a few moves into a kip-up. But the entire point of those were he's got his hands in his pockets, look at him do these little moves and things. Whilst this was evidently trying. First time, and there was move after move, which was a big reaction from the crowd because they'd not seen it before. So they don't know what's going to score the pin. They don't know what. So every near fall is bought, which just really lifts the final sequence.
Yeah, and hadn't seen the fire-ups before either, so that was new to them. What did you think of the ending of the match?
Personally, for me, it's perfect, especially in a match like this. Keep in mind, at the time, PAC is like a top guy. He's not on the pay-per-views in the title matches, but regularly on TV, he's wrestling the top guys in the company. Then he has a little feud with Orange Cassidy, who's been the guy that is really over, but isn't really. He's not had a singles match yet. He's not tried in any of the contests. And for me personally, that makes the result the perfect thing because Orange Cassidy evidently tries, gets even more over in defeat, and PAC keeps to remain as like a top guy. Like, of course he beats Orange Cassidy. He got lulled into the tricks of the Orange Juice Man. But PAC himself is like, no, once he clicks back into gear, he's going to lock in the Brutalizer, and this guy's not going to have a chance. Which was the absolute perfect booking. And just the hot fire of Orange Cassidy, the crowd buying every single fall because they don't know what's going to get it. The biggest Superman punch pop I think I've ever heard. He pulls that out. People on the commentary sold that incredibly well. Just like, what the hell was that? As PAC is then groggy on the ropes after being punched by it.
Potentially controversial question. Does Orange Cassidy have the best Superman punch in wrestling?
Well, I only know two people who do it. So it's not.
I mean, that's, you know what I'm saying, right?
Oh, yeah. Like, Roman's one of those people where it's not his best move, and he uses it as a setup, so I can't really. I'd say Cassidy's is better, but I reckon if Roman tried to use it for the same kind of rhythm that Orange Cassidy does in his matches, it'd probably be pretty good. Yeah. It's just that he uses it as a setup. He uses it as a kind of like fight back type of thing. So not quite the same context. That's not a Twitter answer. Twitter is good or bad.
I'm going to be clipping that post. That's going to be the preview for the. I like how Orange Cassidy uses it as it's always comes out of nowhere. It's not something he sets up, so you don't know that it's coming. And when he hits it, it's like, wow, that came out of nowhere. I also think. I like Orange Cassidy's more, not just because I'm a absolute AEW tragic, that probably too does play into it. I think he's got a slimmer body, so he can contort it a little bit more, whereas Roman's a big lad, like he's a thick big lad, so he doesn't get quite the contortion and air on it. So I just love how fully Orange Cassidy throws himself into it and throws himself into all these moves. He's a slight lad, but he puts all of his body into it in a similar way that, say Darby Allin or Sammy Guevara do. Like, they're not big guys, but they know how to throw all their body in a way that potentially others, who are slightly bigger don't, and without hesitation as well. With the ending, the first time I saw this match, I didn't love that it ended with like interference distractions. But when I was rewatching it, thinking about it, as we said before, the rhythm of the match is that PAC is in control and Orange Cassidy is trying to distract him and get him off his game by, lulling him into a false sense of security and then springing a trap, right? In the end, what happens? It's when Orange Cassidy gets distracted that PAC is able to take advantage. So it really, really puts Orange Cassidy over in that, PAC couldn't get the job done in a normal rhythm of a match. It took this interference to do that. And it's a nice reverse play on the rhythm of the match that was happening earlier and going on up until the point that the Best Friends interfere and the Lucha Bros run in to chase them off and distract the referee and distract Orange Cassidy. So
when you're gonna do a thing, you can foreshadow, you can set it up. It's this crazy concept.
Yep.
just seeing them, it's like the whole rhythm of this match is gonna play off that first half of it, and they're gonna bring it back just on the reverse way. Perfect.
Yeah. Now, I already spoke to Rich about PAC in 2 weeks ago, and we were sort of talking about where PAC's in the AEW hierarchy, and he unfortunately after this point got stuck in the UK with COVID, and I feel like he has had a bit of a snake bitten run, and we were sort of the opinion that he sort of hit his peak at this point and hasn't been able to necessarily get there again. Not that he isn't someone that you can immediately plug into a title feud as they did at Double or Nothing just this year in 2021. But he sort of hit his peak as a character at this point, and within the organization at this point. Do you have any? Would you agree with that? Would you have anything to say to the contrary?
Yeah, he kind of feels. I guess the phrase would be upper mid card, where he's bigger. He's not a mid card guy. He's definitely above those, and he could easily dance with the main event lads. But he's not one of the top guys right now. Yeah, and he could easily elevate him to there, but he's not there right now. If there's one good thing, it was him cutting promos in Foggy Newcastle. It is full kit wanker.
I loved his promos at this point. His promos at this point were incredible.
If there's one bright side to him getting stuck, was then you didn't know when the promos would play because you just hadn't seen him, and suddenly he got PAC in his full gear, just in a dark, freezing cold alleyway in his underpants.
The training montages before the Iron Man match were incredible. And then a few weeks after this one, he had my favorite promo of his where he goes, "I'm a honey badger, mate. I'll gnaw your bastard face off." Incredible. That's one of my favorite lines to this day.
I forgot about the
I feel like I want to post it on Twitter. I'm in an argument with someone. I want to channel that energy.
I think the two ones that got the best reaction: the honey badger line and the Johnny Big Bollocks. It was amazing seeing the American reaction to that line, because that's just a common phrase over here. It's just a him do it.
Now, the thing that I'm still yet to understand with Orange Cassidy, I think now is the time to bring it up, because this, as we said, this was a match that was put in place to feature Orange Cassidy, to show where his position was in the company, to show that he was going to be a really big part of this promotion going forward. What is the ceiling in AEW for Orange Cassidy? Because this is something I just don't know. I cannot see him being a champion, an AEW championship, like an AEW heavyweight title weight holder. TNT, I just don't know. Is this a character that is at all motivated to get belts? I know he had a match with Brody Lee for the TNT championship at one point, but what do you think is the ceiling for this guy in the company? Especially
if he doesn't change character. Because one thing with AEW is they have got arcs for people. So if he doesn't have any core change to his character, I really don't see him being a title holder. And if he is, it's for a week or something. Because that evident, if he's TNT champion, he won't hold it for very long, that kind of thing. But
having said that, just sorry to cut you off, but having said that, at Double or Nothing this year, he was inches away. And I feel like I was going with it. If he had won at that point, I wouldn't have questioned it.
For me, the best way to maybe use him is a bit like Tommy Dreamer in the original ECW, where he never got that top prize. He never won his feud. Like, especially against the big heels. The heels would always win, but you get over in defeat. I feel like Orange Cassidy is the perfect guy to book like that. He can be a top guy. He can be a featured attraction. He can be in main events, but he's not the guy who actually wins in the end. But that helps get the support behind him, and that's the entire point.
Yeah.
Of course, the big difference is ECW didn't actually last that long, and the likelihood would have been that one day Tommy Dreamer would have been champion. But by that point, you've seen a full character arc, and he's not the same guy he was like 3-4 years ago. So, current Orange Cassidy, I think, main event guy, current attraction, but you Tommy Dreamer him. Yeah. But in like 5 years down the line, who knows?
Yeah, well, I mean, Orange Cassidy isn't young. I think he's 35. But his style, I mean, he's got the style for protecting his body. Like he could wrestle that style for a long time. The guy who always gets the Tommy Dreamer comparisons in AEW is Eddie Kingston, and for a good reason. Like there is a lot of parallels you can draw there. But given that this is the promotion for the the anxious millennial cowboys out there, I feel like Orange Cassidy is a great person to have as the sort of the spiritual Tommy Dreamer of AEW, if they choose to go that way. I would love to see like more of a development of his character. I'm not sure what that would look like, but he has sort of had a similar sort of style. The Chris Jericho feud was very similar in that it was more prolonged and they had multiple matches, but it wasn't, it was a similar sort of style, and the character he showed was not drastically removed or anything from this. Maybe I'd love to see them put him through more trauma, and I know that in the feud with Miro and Kip Sabian they sort of did that. You had Chucky T having to be the butler and things like that, but I'd love to see them maybe punish him a little bit more. Maybe a feud with MJF would be interesting, and see how someone like MJF really puts the thumb on top of him and really turns the screws on his on him. And we see what it looks like when not only does Orange Cassidy want to try, but he wants to try and really knock your block off. Yeah, that's something I'd like to see down the line. And yeah, as I said, I think TNT Championship maybe. Yeah, I could see him getting it at some point if need be. But who knows, if they play their cards right. This guy is someone who has remained as over as this since. So, yeah. My last question, Imp, on this match. We sort of talked earlier about other comedy matches that AEW have done. I want to put the Stadium Stampede aside because I do think that's a completely different sort of deal. I don't know. It's difficult to compare, this 45-minute cinematic epic against a thing that was less than 15 minutes in the wash. Do you think this is the best comedy match that AEW have done?
I'm trying to think of other ones that could be anywhere near it. Because again, Orange Cassidy's like other feuds never hit this peak, if that makes sense. Because he's still his character's gotten more over. That stuff has helped. But the actual like match itself, in terms of if I'm going to starve it, of where I'm going to put it, I don't think any of. I mean. Because
it's certainly better than the Dustin versus Sean Spears match from from Double or Nothing. He had the undies on with Tully on it and stuff.
He was doing the news things. We're like, where's this going? This is going somewhere interesting. This could lead to something. What's he going to do? And he comes out, and it's just, I'm just like, I don't know what this is. I guess the other one, which was a bit of a flop, was the Big Swole versus Britt Baker. But again, that's in a dentistry one. That was a bit more different. But the other ones that kind of compete with it aren't really comedy. Again, like Orange Cassidy wrestling PAC and Kenny Omega. There's comedy in it, but it's not a comedy match. And the same with the feud with Kip Sabian and Miro, where they had the kind of arcade stuff all set all over the place. That wasn't really a comedy match. So it's and especially feud with Pride and Powerful as well. That wasn't comedy. Close. No. Like the only one I could think of is Jericho with the Orange Juice match, which was just pure silliness. But again, it's definitely nowhere near this match. So I think in this low bar, I don't think there is anything else near it.
Well, it's a low bar to be the best. It's a low bar to be the best, but it's still a damn good match. Like as we said earlier, the contrast between these two characters is fantastic. Like just the pure straight man. Like you could not get a better straight man than PAC from the ranks of AEW against this guy who's,
Oh, actually, I just remembered the first time we saw with Brody Lee and Dark Order, the first time we see them as a team all wrestling together. And you've got the silly shenanigans of all the little people around him. You see the first time you see the fire from John Silver and Alex Reynolds together. Like the firecracker with Silver, first time that exploded.
Yep.
You see Evil Luno and Stu Grayson finally getting on that page, but Brody Lee's just shouting at them the entire time. Yep. It was really funny. I don't know whether to class that as comedy. It was the dynamic between the team was really funny as we saw them click for the first time.
Yep. Yeah, no, I'd put that one up there as well. Certainly not the one at this level. This one, this is rarefied air. Like, I cannot think of too many other comedy matches that I would put up alongside this one, inside or outside of AEW. Look, that's everything I've got to say about this match. We've sort of covered everything off. Was there anything you'd like to add there at the end? If not, feel free to get your plugs in.
I want to see Orange Cassidy versus Yano through the Forbidden Door. Other people got other dream matches. I've got my own dreams of my own. that's what I want to see.
Can you imagine? You know what mine would be? This is the only other person who is more of a straight man than PAC. Orange Cassidy versus Menorah Suzuki.
It was meant
the
to
match
happen.
The pandemic robbed us. Yes. Can you imagine Orange Cassidy doing one of his shin kicks and then Minoru Suzuki just murdering him with one of his forearms? The strong style strike exchange.
That's the biggest loss of the pandemic in terms of wrestling matches that we didn't get to see.
that is, you need to make sure there's a qualifier added on at the end there. That one.
Yeah. But the fact that it was meant to happen. I think it was WrestleMania weekend. It was meant to be like one of the GCW attractions. Yeah. And we lost it. It's such a shame.
that would be Yano versus Orange Cassidy would be a hoot. That would be fantastic. I vouch for that.
Because it does the whole point of Yano is his opposition then really tries to get back in the ring and do something, but what do you do with Cassidy? Yeah. It's just like, what are you doing, Yano? Yeah. I don't get just laying in handcuffing and slowly realizing what's happened. It's like, what did you do that for?
My favorite Yano matches are against Zack Sabre Jr., who is not that dissimilar from PAC in the watch. This British, arrogant, serious, real technical, absolute ass kicker. Anyway, I think we'll wrap it up at that point. Give the good people your plugs. Where can they find you?
They can find me on Twitter at the Damn Implicat, that's damn as in damn, and on Twitch over at the Implications with 2 S's. Also, I column write and do the weekly AEW and Raw reviews in both podcast and video form on their YouTube channel for WrestlingHeadlines.net. Every week I suffer through Raw, and then I really happily review a great wrestling show every Thursday. So you can catch me there. Also, I'm currently covering the G1 Climax. I think it'll be over by the time this one comes out if I can figure out time. Yeah, this will be well over.
Yeah, it'll likely be wrapping up.
I mean, I doubt you can release multiple weeks of episodes within 1 week.
Yeah,
it'll come when you finished. Yeah.
Hey, you can always find the archives on Wrestling Headlines.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that'll be that. I'm writing that with Jeremy Donovan of the Keeping It Strong Style podcast this year. Sam's my normal go. We kept the same format, but this time I'm the one posting it, so I need to do more effort. It's that realization. Every week I turn up to the G1 Climax review. Sam's got the Word document all ready. He always said, "Don't worry, Matt. I'll post it. Not this year. If I don't do it, the washing doesn't get done."
That's what your mum always told you. Anyway, look, thank you very much for coming on today, Imp. You'll be coming back in a couple of weeks' time to do another match of a very different tone. We'll reveal that later. But next week, if you join us, we'll be doing Jon Moxley versus Brody Lee. So make sure you tune in for that. You can find me on Twitter, Sir_Samuel, and you can listen to all of the great podcasts on the Social Suplex Podcast Network. Thank you very much for listening today, and I will see you again next week. Thanks for listening to the AEW Match Guide podcast. If you enjoyed the show, then you can subscribe on the podcast app of your choice
so you never miss an episode. Also, feel free to let me know on Twitter at Sir_Samuel. I'd love to hear from you. The AEW Match Guide podcast is brought to you by the Social Suplex Podcast Network, where you can find many other fantastic podcasts discussing not just AEW, but all parts of the world of professional wrestling. Looking forward to seeing you again next week. I'm Sam Brown.
Whatever brings you the most joy this holiday season, Best Buy has the tech to make it happen. Maybe it's welcoming your guests with a sparkling clean home with the help of a new robot vacuum, or cooking dinner to crispy perfection in less time with a new air fryer. Or maybe it's just a cozy holiday movie marathon on a new flat-screen TV. Best Buy has you covered no matter what you're looking for. Get your gifts at Best Buy fast and free, including free next-day delivery on thousands of items. Visit bestbuy.com or download the app to shop now.